Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jr. ato a warning message to President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC Amanyokunu. Said there is something that is going on in the NDC. Now it is likely to water down all the legacy. Yeah, President John Dramani Mahama and the NDC Amanyokunu are achieving even from Mahama first term to the second coming year. Wabe achieve an outstanding performance as compared to a president Omwanyano. Now, what is that one thing that is likely to water down and all this achievement of President John Dramani Mahama? Kwesi Pratt Jr. ama the details in the story. Na kameho na yenkoti ensemno from Kwesi Pratt Jr.
Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there osia dem yopo.
I have come to respect the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, Fifi Kwesi. My respect for Fifi Kwesi has grown over these last 20 months. Why? He is not scared of anybody, big or small. He says things that are meant to protect the party and so on. When this third term agenda came up, did you hear his statement? He said the most sensible things, and he said it with courage and conviction. These are the kinds of people who can lead parties in government. Not the kinds of people who have thrown caution to the wind and are all over the country campaigning to become president. They are irrelevant to the process of sustaining the party and holding the party in a position to win the next elections. It is the Fifi Kwesis. Those who say it as it is, those who raise the caution, those who guide people, those who bring about a certain cohesion in the party, like Fifi Kwesi, they are the people who are going to be responsible for the victory of the National Democratic Congress if it should happen in 2028. You see, Sana, there's a certain assumption, is it assumption or presumption? Sometimes I get confused with English. Okay. That look, the MPP did so badly, so horribly, that as for 2028 victory for NDC, it's a foregone conclusion. That is a lie. Because there are several things which can change this. If the pursuit of personal ambition in the party continues the way it is going, it can contribute to a defeat of the National Democratic Congress. That's one. Two, if the NDC conducts itself in a manner which allows its opponent to build a certain momentum at the right time, on the wings of that momentum, they can win elections. So in politics, you don't allow your opponents to develop a certain momentum. And even in Ghanaian history, can give you many, many instances. Look, before the 1992 elections, those who had painstakingly studied the politics of Ghana could swear that there was no way the Dankwa Buzia people could win elections, any free and fair elections in this country. They could swear. Look, in 1969 when they won elections, the argument was that because they banned the CPP and so on and so on. You know why? Because Buzia became the boss of the Center for Civic Education and so on. That was the argument. Okay. But the MPP came back in 2000 because of a certain momentum which was generated in the late 1980s, 1981, 92. A certain momentum started building. That momentum for freedom, that momentum for justice, that momentum, anti-dictatorship momentum and so on, that momentum continued building till 2000. And that changed, it changed the dynamics of our politics. And that is why the NPP later on could win elections on its own strength. It changed the situation completely. If you take our history, I am convinced, and nothing will change that conviction, that if you take out Nkrumah, in terms of national development, a government that developed national infrastructure, that gave us a sense of pride in being Ghanaian and so on, it is Achampon. Ask yourself, how come when Achampon was being shot at the stakes, Ghanaians were cheering? How come? Because the Achampon government allowed a certain momentum to build on the back of the anti-union government campaign. It is momentum, you understand? So, if this government allows a certain momentum to build, that momentum can cause a lot of havoc in the 2028 elections. And that momentum can cause havoc in spite of the achievements of the government. Okay, today we are saying that the government has achieved a lot. The city has been stabilized, which is true. There is a lot more discipline in financial management and so on. All these are true. But all this can pale into insignificance if you allow a certain momentum to build. So this is about, NPP did so badly that we can go to sleep and misbehave and still win election 2028 is not true. In fact, one major scandal, just one major scandal, can change the equation. A scandal which gets Ghanaians angry, and so one scandal can change the equation. Now, listen. In 2024, the people of Ghana went to the polls. They voted for something. What did they vote for? Some say they voted for President Mahama. I disagree. President Mahama was he became the symbol of the aspirations of our people. What we were voting for in 2024 was for better roads, improved access to housing, better health care, better access to education, security and safety and so on. Those were the things that people were voting for. President Mahama became the symbol of those aspirations. His name on the ballot box represented what the NDC was going to do in order to achieve those objectives that the people had. That's why he was voted for. So if you leave out those objectives and you place personality instead in that space, you don't understand what politics is about. And you don't position yourself in a manner which would attract the sympathy of the people, the votes of the people, and so on. You do not become a symbol of the aspirations of the people anymore. You understand? Senna, let me do something. You see, this proposal to allow dual citizenship to hold any position they want or like, except the vice president and the president. You know how it's being interpreted on the street. You know. I talk to people and they say, don't mind them. These rich big men and so on, they've sent their children abroad. Their children are enjoying, they are not suffering our pain or anything. And they are creating conditions for these children who did not suffer with us to come back and lord it over us. Alright? That's the common feeling on the ground. That is the common feeling on the ground. But you see, without diverting, listen to me carefully. Everybody who becomes a citizen of the United States of America has to take what they call the oath of allegiance. Now, if you read that oath of allegiance, you would not be crazy enough, you will not be crazy to suggest that somebody holding U.S. citizenship and Ghanaian citizenship should become your chief of defense staff. You'll be mad to do that. Because that oath of allegiance says, in clear language, go and Google it. It says in clear language, that you will be loyal to the United States of America and that you are prepared to bear arms against any other country whose interest conflicts with that of the US. Somebody who has taken this oath and has not renounced this oath, how do you make him your Chief Justice? Somebody who is ready to take up weapons against your country, how do you make him Chief of Defense Staff? How do you make him IGP? How do you make him head of Yoko or head of NIB? Are you mad? So, you see, election 2028 is going to be about all these things and not individuals. And not individuals with bloated egos. It wouldn't matter whose ego is fat in the 2028 election. It will be about these things. And you see, I agree with my brother here, lawyer Apia Dankwa. I agree with him 100%. Look, that it is not true that parties win or lose elections on their record. That cannot be true. Because some parties have no record on which to campaign. And an example is Pasteur in Senegal. New party, within months, it won elections. Okay? So elections are not always about your record. They're about so many other things and so on. That's the first point. The second point I like to make simply is that, you see, what we are discussing is a conflict between individual interest and collective interest. The moment you join a political party, you undertake to subordinate your personal interest to the collective interest. So when you have people join political parties and are still strong to their personal ambition and personal interest, they become a huge problem for the political party. The political party, in essence, is about collective vision, it's about collective aspiration and so on. The collective is so very important. And this is what even validates the principle of democratic centralism. You understand? So any individual in any political party who thinks or feels that he or her personal ambition should be the overriding consideration is a danger to the political party and must be exercised as quickly as possible. You understand what I'm saying? Now, we cannot today be talking about the collective interest as opposed to the individual interest and still be saying that, oh, it is okay for people to be ambitious, you know, yes, they can hide behind the scene and do their campaign and at a certain time come open. It is not okay. It cannot be okay. There's a collective interest which must be pursued. And it's only that collective interest that can bring victory. Master, this week, something happened. And I don't think that people are averting their minds to it. Two public institutions were engaged in an open fight, making allegations and counter-allegations against each other in Tama. It should not happen under any government. The Tema Development Corporation and the Tema Metropolitan Assembly were engaged in open fight. How can this happen? Why is this allowed to happen? Because this is the surest way of breaking down the government machinery. This is the surest way of making sure the public trust in government is eroded. And when these things happen, heads ought to roll. People ought to be taught important lessons in subordinating their ego and personal ambitions to the general will. How come? Tema Development Corporation, Tema Municipal Assembly, two persons appointed by the same president are out there in the public exchanging words and so on. How do you tolerate this even for half a second? And you know why this happened? This happened because earlier misbehavior had not been checked. When the Ministry of Agric issued a statement challenging figures in the budget of the government, if the matter had been resolved and somebody had been punished severely, it would not have repeated itself. Because I've always asked the question, two cabinet ministers, what is the purpose of the cabinet meeting every Thursday? If not to exchange views, to iron out differences and so on, and to make sure that all of them work up to the president. The moment you have two cabinet ministers doing what happened in the past, it will suggest a breakdown of government. And it will suggest a weakness in leadership. It will suggest the lack of focus on the common agenda and so on. So when that happened, somebody should have been dealt a devastating blow. It wouldn't have happened again. That happened, nobody was punished. The Tema incident has happened. So far, nobody has been punished. Nobody has been publicly reprimanded. It will happen again and happen again. All these things chip at the credibility of government. You know, the credibility of government is chipped away small. You understand what I'm saying? So, and normally, under normal circumstances, because I admit that we are not in normal circumstances, this is the prime responsibility, not even of the president, but the chief of staff. The chief of the staff is the enforcer of discipline. You understand? But we are in strange circumstances where people are also openly campaigning for the chief of staff to replace the president. Okay? So these are strange circumstances. So, Massa, this personal pursuit of personal ambition and personal alignments and so on, this is what it leads to. It leads to confusion, it leads to chaos, it leads to diversion of attention from the general focus of the political party to useless, unbridled, sometimes crazy ambition of individuals. Crazy, completely crazy ambition of individuals and so on. Okay. Now, we are asked to comment on what the Vice President said on persons in government or in the National Democratic Congress who are peaking before their time. Why should I comment? Why should I comment? I started making these comments months before the Vice President spoke about it. Why should I comment? I was speaking about this months ago. I started talking about this months ago. I have no comments to make. It is not a new subject. This is an old subject. We've been discussing it and so on. It is interesting that the Vice President realizes what we have realized a long time ago. You understand? So, why do you invite me to comment on something that I started? In any way, I have no comments to make. One of the things that worries me is that those who persistently are misbehaving in the pursuit of their personal interests keep saying one thing, that, oh, President Mahama, he will soon become a lame duck president. So we can go ahead and do what we like and so on, build our war chest and so on. What? Do you know what that means? That simply means that very soon they would not allow him to function as president. That simply means that very soon they are going to disobey his instructions. That means that very soon they are going to set up centers that will parallel the power of the president. These are very dangerous, subversive statements for people to make, especially if they are NDC people. That President Mahama will soon become a lame duck president. So don't mind him. Let's go ahead and do what we like. Well, President Mahama, it's up to you. If you will sit down for some people to turn you into a lame duck president, it's your business. It's not my business.
Internal struggle in the NDC for air leadership and as a flag bearership to lead the NDC in the upcoming 2028 election. Mujib Abdurrahman, or NDC communication team member, and I know at ASR power struggle. I want the NDC Amanyokunu. Na yenti the details from Mujib.
This one, whether we like it or not, we've all seen what is happening. Madam has stated her position, and I actually didn't expect anything. You know, she's a mother, very calm demeanor, very honest in her dealing, looking at her track record and where she's coming from. So I was not expecting anything less than what she has put there. And that is the truth. They have sold their message to the people of Ghana during the election period, and Ghanaians bought into it and voted massively for them to change the fortunes of this country. That is by their research agenda manifesto. And how many months? 1 year, 7 months down the line, and you see people jostling around the country talking of succeeding the president. Yes, it is within their right, but some of us also think that it is too early a time for people who want to succeed the president, not concerned about what the performance of government will be, or making sure that they are able to satisfy the people of Ghana by what they have presented to them and they've bought into it. But just to be going around and talking of succeeding the president. So when Madam was interviewed, she made her point clear that no, that would be amount to the betrayal of the people of Ghana. For her, her position is to make sure that they fulfill the promise to the people. And I believe in that statement but it will be impossible, it will be difficult for the National Democratic Congress in the 2028 election. But be as it may, if you perform poorly in government, whoever you present as your candidate, it is going to be difficult asking Ghanaians to vote for that person. I hope you've seen the argument. But whoever would take the mantle from President John Dramani Mahama as the leader or flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress will write on the back of the performance of the government. What are you going to campaign for on? It is based on the promises or whatever that the government has achieved within the last 3 or so years. That is what you are going to base on. So whether you like President Mahama as president or leader of the NDC and you want to succeed him, or you don't like him but he's the president and the leader of the NDC, you want to succeed him, but your core objective is for him to succeed as a president. That is the general performance of the government. But we've all seen names that have popped up, and then we've seen we've seen the banter, especially when others were on thank you tour, whatever thank you tour was it, but we were just watching, and we saw others also say it was just a window dress thank you tour or whatever. We saw all those things, but that is up to them. So for us, we have elected our flag bearer, very kind, honest person, so we are just waiting. So whoever they decide when the time comes. But for what Madam said, I think that if the others, those who have the intention of succeeding or also putting themselves up for that high office, will listen to her, and I think that will be the best. But it is up to them to decide. It is their choice. But as for the truth, we said it here. It is early days yet. It is not time, but you see people. But that is how it is. And we believe getting a leader aside the John Dramani Mahama, we know it's not going to be easy for the NDC, and we are watching. We are watching. We are watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
Team member Edenesem Eba Dubiyeno. Lawyer Apia Dankwa of Movement for Change, Eso Edenano Eto, a NDC flag bearership race in preparation towards a 2028 election. Nayenti a Nensema or the Tuja.
Then if there's one thing that is clear, shows you the strength, the courage, and the focus of the leadership of the NDC as against the NPP. Because when this issue about who succeeds President Mahama came up, and it came up right after he won power. Clearly, there are elements in the NDC who want to see way beyond what's called 2028, and we're doing all in their power, understand, to work towards seizing power legally per the constitution. And so, without having recourse to the mandate we give them, the mandate as the constitution itself give them. Because I always say, Ghana's 1992 constitution is special in that it's one of the few constitutions I've seen. We haven't seen another constitution that has that. But chapter 6 sets an agenda for every government. And for me, that represents your first mandate. And the mandate of their own, the term of their own manifesto, which had endorsement of the people of this country. And the mandate of Article 1 of the 1992 Constitution. There were elements within their party that felt that, listen, we ought to think about who succeeds His Excellency President Mahama, forgetting that that job will be made much easier if His Excellency John Mahama succeeds in delivering the mandate of the people. But I was really impressed when these activities, nauseating activities, while they were happening, the General Secretary had the courage to come out and call them to order. You recall? And it was not just this, but also when there were attempts to push the third term agenda, President Mahama's third term agenda, when clearly there is no absurdity or ambiguity in interpreting what the Constitution says concerning what's it called, the third term. You understand? Because Pratt explained the purposive approach and rightly explained. So the only reason why there's any confusion about interpretation is where, when you interpret, it will amount to what? An absurdity. An absurdity will include an interpretation that will lead to fighting against our collective purpose as a people, or where there's an ambiguity, where there's a confusion as to the meaning. Instead of that, there are certain elements that want to, and they are still going to push that. But I'm very impressed with how the General Secretary has handled himself. He called in the famous sycophant speech. He gave the clear indication. But I think the position of the leadership of the party has got a dent because of the perception that the chairman of the party himself is also clamoring for leadership. And so it serves as a dent on the efforts of the General Secretary. It is for these reasons why the words of the Vice President could not have come at a better time, and reasons why we should hail her sense of leadership. Because we are seeing every week or every 2 weeks we're inundated with some opinion polls. You understand? I've not heard it anywhere, anywhere, but they have been pushing the agenda on the poor woman's neck. You understand? And to come out and say that, listen, hold your horses. Hold your horses. Certainly, this is a discussion that will be had. Because it will be hypocrites. It will be very hypocritical if we think that the conversation about who succeeds President Mahama as the leader of the NDC and potentially the leader of this country won't come up. It will certainly come up. You understand? But politics, as in life, timing is very critical. So the same way we condemned the timing of the New Patriotic Party on their 6th August demonstration, then clearly we ought to condemn the timing of these conversations. You understand? Because there's a reason why our constitution captured political parties. Because all political parties, whether you're in opposition, whether you're in power, have a role, a critical role in shaping the aspirations of this country. So when you behave in a manner, or when you get the timing wrong in a certain in a certain agenda, then that has the potential of impacting into why we even have political power in the first place. Especially in the times we are in, and the agenda that the National Democratic Congress is presented to the people of Ghana has been why we should give them power, a reset agenda. Because what are they seeking to reset? Or why was the call for reset critical, and why did that call get the mandate of the people of this country? Because we have been put through 8 years of terrible leadership. Leadership I called Abosam Samana on this your show. You understand? Leadership that caused a fundamental lack of credibility on the economic fortunes of this country. Because when you are governing, you also govern the economy. The economy had a dent. DDEP. All the principles we know and trust in, you understand, were breached. Governance itself, politically, there was lack of credibility. Where suddenly there was a culture that was the culture of slotism. The culture of slotism. Because for 8 years, what do we hear from the NPP? Vote me into power and I'll give you slots. When you're doing the internal, I'll give you slot. The culture of slotism. The culture of attacking state institutions. You recall the appointment of people who were perceived to be NPP party faithfuls onto the EC. The culture of impunity that led to corruption on unimaginable levels. So when NDC said, listen, we are come to reset the system. We are come to reset, and that reset ought to lead in aligning our agenda to the nation's agenda. The people of Ghana overwhelmingly supported that agenda. So that if the pursuit of that agenda, can be hindered by this unnecessary clamor for succession, then it represents a fundamental betrayal of the mandate that the people of Ghana give to His Excellency John Mahama. And they say, cometh the moment, cometh the woman in this case. Because remember my excitement when she was appointed as, Her Excellency Jinana was appointed as, on this show, I was so excited. Because for me, she represented the dawn of a new kind of politician. And I saw her potential to break all frontiers in our politics. And I've not been disappointed this year and how many months? 12 plus 8, 20 months. And for me, this call she's made, a call to the NDC, that listen, I know that this conversation is going to come up, but hold your horses. We have a mandate, and that mandate is very critical at this stage that we are in as a nation. For me, it gives me hope. It gives, and I want to liken what she's doing and where we are as a people and how our political parties are failing us to a story in the Bible. When Elijah went to cry to God, when Jezebel had taken over Israel and Baal had taken over, so Elijah went to God and said, God, all your prophets are dead. I'm the only one who is left. And God told Elijah that no, you are not the only one. There are 7,000 people who have not followed Baal. Right, when you take our political space, you ask yourself, do we have patriots still doing politics? Do we have people who do politics because of the interests of this country? Do you have people who understand that when you are put in a position of fiduciary, then your sole consideration, whatever you do as a politician, is what is in the best interest of the country? Now, do we have people who still consider the words of Aristotle, where it says that the ends of politics ought to be in the creation of virtuous men, and towards that agenda, then all efforts in politics? Because Aristotle actually defined politics as a science, and said it's a science that uses all the other sciences towards what end? To build a strong state. Because in having a strong state is the only chance we have at building virtuous men. You understand? General Nopukwajima has answered that question. That yes, indeed, we have patriots who are still doing politics. We have people who still have not lost focus of why they ought to do politics. And I think the NDC must answer positively to this call. Yes, there is going to be a conversation. And that conversation will be within the constitutional rights of the NDC. When I say the constitution, I don't mean their own constitution, but the 1992 constitutional rights of the NDC to sponsor people for elections. But that conversation must be had at the right time. Because if you ask my personal opinion, there are 1,000 times so far President Mahama is 1,000 times better than the leadership or the lack of leadership we saw from Nanado. It's made some of us to question that so all the propaganda they did in between when we were in the party, you understand? We were strong for we all didn't know. I'm saying madam for say no interjection. That's the rule here. Last time when Senator wasn't here, you preached that day. You preached every protocol here. You have because you see from that spirit when the custodian of the rights are not here, then the foreign spirit to work. Today they are here. Won't allow you to misbehave. Understand? Let me stay focused. So when we were in the party, like Uncle Kwesi has just said, we were outsiders. Even though we were in the party, we were not at the helm. Understand? And we trusted in the parties, like all parties ought to have an agenda towards building a nation. Not knowing, so far as that party was concerned, when they are in their party headquarters, the temple of the familiar spirit, facts do not matter. What matters is propaganda. Yes, the true propaganda. And we unfortunately we swallowed that propaganda. And you know that propaganda included that statement that under President Kufuor $1, 1 CD, under Mills and Mahama $1, 2 CDs, and one would have thought that the envelope that they would resign. That the reason they didn't resign is the envelope under the table, that fat envelope. And then when we gave him that power, and he came and $1 became 17 CDs, he didn't resign. So should we multiply the envelope by 17? Should we do that? Propaganda. And so propaganda will start his Excellency John Mahama. I'm not saying he's doing perfect. I'm not saying that he's even doing all I'm saying is that when you do a comparative analysis between his Excellency John Mahama and Nanado, it's 1,000 times better. And you see, we are here and we are all going to critique where we think that they should do things better. But under no circumstance should this effort at resetting this country be touted by this unnecessary clamor for who is going to take over or succeed His Excellency John Mahama. And so I think this call by His Excellency the Vice President is in the right order. It tells me that we still have people in this country who are ready to put the interest of the country ahead of the party's interests. We have people who understand why they were given a mandate and are ready to speak out, where clearly the party, the machinery that brought them to power is veering off from that mandate. And I think it's important that the National Democratic Congress as a political party heed positively to this call.
PENDREAM TV now so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.